Hey everyone, welcome to the Mighty Books Podcast, where we sit down and chat with mighty authors about their books, message, writing successes, struggles, and other relevant authorship topics. I'm your host, Ryan Mlb, author of the Beasts of Men and Gods series. Now let's get started on today's chat. On the second episode of the Mighty Books Podcast, we are featuring author Robert Ingram. Robert Ingram is a former baseball coach, an award-winning speaker, and former corporate marketing executive. The Genius Who Saved Baseball is his entry into fiction. He previously co-authored two business books, Marketing by Delight and Your Ultimate Sales Force. Robert lives on Fox Island, Washington, with his wife, Cara, and dog, Sunny. All right, we are here with Bob Ingram. How are you doing today, Bob?
Hey, I'm doing great over here on Fox Island. It's a little bit cold today, but other than that, life is good.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so we're here to talk to you about your book. What is the title of your book?
It's The Genius Who Saved Baseball.
I loved your title. Actually, the first time I saw your title, I thought it was actually a nonfiction book. I'm like, what figure in history is he talking about? And so the further I looked into it, I realized it was fiction. But as reading your book, it was definitely I wish it would have been a nonfiction based off true events. But can you tell us a bit about your book?
Well, yeah, first on the title is interesting. That wasn't even my first title. My first title was much less memorable and not as good. It was The Boy Who Saved Baseball. Okay. And it turned out that title was taken. I didn't know it early on. And so I was, in a just quandary. I don't know what to do now. I finished my book and the title's taken. So I came up with The Genius Who Saved Baseball, which is way better because it evokes curiosity. And when I'm at a book signing, people will walk by and they'll see my signage and they'll say, "So who's the genius?" And so it starts a conversation. So I will usually say, well, the genius is one of my characters in the story. I'm just the dummy that wrote the book. And they'll laugh. So
you gotta hook them in. That was, like I said, that it got my attention too, because I think you were on with Mary West Network, and we were you were chit-chatting about it, and I'm like, what is this genius? Which genius? I was trying to go through my memory. My memory of baseball is I don't have a lot of baseball knowledge, but I was really into the Mariners early on, like early 90s, because that's when I was introduced to baseball. And I'm like, who is that person? So it was cool. That is definitely a hook that got me into it. That's for sure. So, I mean, you, what inspired you to write the book? You just, you used to coach baseball, right? Did that have some inspiration?
I played, I coached. The inspiration, though, I can really tie it to one evening. One evening, yet again, I was yelling at my television set as I watched games. Shut up about pitch count, launch angles, and exit velocities. It's an instinctual game. Because if you watch baseball, and if you've watched in the last 20 years, analytics have taken over. And that's all they talk about. If a pitcher throws 100 pitches, he's got to come out of the game because, God forbid, his arm's going to fall off on the 101st pitch. So I was yelling on my television. My wife would tell me, "Shut up." So I got literally one evening. I describe it as a lightning bolt of an idea to write a story about it. And so I sort of got the gist of it in literally like 20 minutes. And then I just ruminated on it for, weeks and weeks, and it sort of morphed into the beginning of a story in my head. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to open up a blank Word document and I'm going to write chapter 1 and see where it goes.
Yeah, it all starts at the beginning. I mean, that initial, like I said, that lightning bolt, that's how I describe it too, because there's days where you're just you go about life, you're doing your own thing, and then all of a sudden you just have this idea out of nowhere. It might inspire you from something, like you said, watching baseball or kind of, conversation you had, but it is funny how that works. Just go write it down real quick. So you save that little nugget and then you work on it and it grows into a book eventually. So, I mean, with that, how long did it take you to write the book?
It was a little over 2 years.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's way less than mine. It took me 15.
Well, I love your story too.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed yours. 2 years is a solid amount of time. And that's a good, I mean, it took me about a week to get through. So, I mean, it took me about a week to get through. So it's a good long read. It's almost 400 pages.
Yeah. 384.
Awesome. And so I know I gave you good feedback because I really enjoyed it. Have you gotten other good feedback from folks?
Well, I've gotten a lot of good feedback, and some of it has been anticipated. Some of it's been a little bit surprising. One of the things that I wanted to accomplish, and I think based on the feedback, it's happened. I wanted it to be the kind of story that a casual baseball fan or even a non-baseball fan would still enjoy. And I want it to be sort of like Field of Dreams. Somebody that's a casual fan or even a non-fan can watch Field of Dreams or the Sandlot movie, and they still love it. They still get goosebumps. They still get a little tear, a little tug at their heart. So I was trying to accomplish that with my story. And some of the compliments that really warm my heart more than any is when it's somebody like that, that's maybe female, not played baseball or softball, maybe they had little casual understanding, and they tell me, I love the book.
Oh, that's great.
And they read it because they're a friend of mine, or somebody recommended it highly, and it wasn't anything they would have picked up.
Yeah.
So
I love that positive feedback. It definitely makes you want to keep getting the word out there. Definitely keep the word out there. Let's see. So it didn't sound like there would be more a second book, but are you going to have a second book to this story, or maybe future books to go along with it?
Well, I'm thinking of one. I have one that I'm sort of working on in my head, but I haven't written the first word yet. And I'm not in any particular rush about that. It'll just come organically when it comes, and I'll know when's the right time to start. And it won't be exactly a sequel, but some of the characters will transfer over to the new book. Some of the locales will transfer over. So it'll be connected, but it won't be a true sequel.
Okay. And I think that's actually sometimes better because you don't have to necessarily read the first book to understand what's going on in the second book.
Correct.
So that I kind of like. The standalones are great because sometimes people, walk into a bookstore, look online, they see this book and they buy it without knowing if it's in a series or not. And they grab it, they read it, they like it. Like, oh, there's another book. Oh, it's actually before this one.
Yeah.
And, it didn't affect the story at all.
One of the things that I learned was that it's, this is what I learned from my publishing coach, that you have the same publishing coach that I do, yes. Patrick Snow.
Yep.
And Patrick taught me that what you do is he said, how long do you work on your book? How long do you promote your book? How long do you market your book? He says, for life. You market your book for life. So I don't want to be an author that just finishes one book and then says, okay, I'm going to write a second book. Then I finish that book, I'm going to write a third book. I want to promote the book that I wrote. I think it's a great story. I actually want to have it converted into a movie. That's my big dream now, and that's my mission. So I think it could be a classic baseball movie. So I want to spend a lot of my energy, and I was a marketing and salesperson my entire working career. So if I can't market my own product, my own book, my own potential movie, shame on me.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that type of thing. I enjoy the promotion. So I'm going to be working really hard to promote the book, get a wider audience, and actually have it raise some money through investors and have it converted into an independent film. So that's, to me right now, more of a burning desire than jumping right into the second book.
Awesome. That is a great goal to have. Well, you and I had met up a couple of weeks ago. What was the story that you said someone came and approached you, which I thought was pretty neat, at the barbecue place?
Oh, I think you're referencing the story I told you. I was doing some book signings there, and I met a lot of new people, new readers. So I met this gentleman that came in, he bought my book, and he came in about 2 months later because I was author of the week, and I rotate like every 8 weeks or so. I'm the author of the week. So he came in, he bought my book. Then he came in about 2 months later, and I was on there again. and he just raved about the book. He said he hadn't read a book in a long time. He said, "This is the best book I've probably read in 40 years."
Wow.
And he went on and on. And long story short, we became friends. We have similar backgrounds. He was a corporate marketing executive with a well-known corporation that everybody would know if I said it. And so we've become friends. And I told him about the movie. I want to have it converted into a movie. So he is all about helping me find investors. He knows some pretty wealthy individuals. So anyway, I'm excited. I have some other fishing lines out there with potential movie investors. So
That's awesome.
Kind of got me excited these days.
That would definitely make me excited too. That's when you told me about that, I got excited for you. So I mean, yeah, keep me posted on that. I'd love to learn more, and if I could support any way, shape, or form, I will. I was even reading this with my boys for a little bit, talking about baseball. They're starting to get into it a little bit, and they're like, that'd be something kind of cool to read. And so it might be I told them he might make it into a book, and they got excited for you too. So let's see. So during your process, what'd you find was like the easiest part of writing your book?
Wow, that's a great question. For me, the easiest part of writing the book was the dialogue.
Okay.
I just, for some reason, I guess as writers or in any endeavor, you feel like you have certain things that are sort of in your wheelhouse and come naturally to you, and other things that you struggle with. And it just has always come natural for me to write dialogue. So, I see scenes in my head rather than words on a piece of paper. I see scenes in my head. So even when I was writing this, it was a movie in my head. But when I know the characters and I have the characters well developed, then I have a good sense of what would this person say and how would they say it?
Yeah. Well, and you said you pull a lot of your characters and what they would say from people which I think that helps a lot.
Well, that was one of the maybe weirdest things that I did as an author that I've never heard of anybody doing. And I think it was probably my inexperience that allowed me to go down this path. If I'd been a more experienced author, I probably would have said, no, this doesn't make any sense. You could get in trouble. But I decided that when I was writing the story, I wanted to use people for characters, people who I really know, friends of mine, and use their real names. And I didn't even tell them. And of course, I portrayed them all in a good light.
Yes.
But when I went back through and I wrote the story and I kept inserting friends' name, if I needed a cab driver, it would be a guy that's a friend of mine. If I needed a newspaper reporter interviewing some of the characters in the story, it would be somebody that I knew. So in the end, I went through and counted up. I had the names of 86 of my friends' names in the book.
Wow.
And I didn't tell them. So my friends are buying the book and, they're reading it, and all of a sudden they come across their own name, and it's a freak out in a really good way. And I'll tell you one story, if I may, that's interesting about that.
Absolutely.
It's funny. It's the funniest story. So there's a friend of mine named John Kelly, and John Kelly is in the story. He's on one of the baseball games, and he gets on first base, but he's a slow runner. So I sent in a pinch runner to run for him, and the pinch runner that I sent in to run for him is another friend, a friend of his too, named Russ Sims. So in the story, John Kelly gets on first base, and then the manager sends in a pinch runner for him because the quote in the story was, John Kelly runs like he has bricks in his britches. He's slow.
Yeah.
So he calls me up on the phone. I didn't tell him he was in the story. He calls me up. He didn't read it for quite some time, but he calls me up finally and he says, hey, I just got to tell you, I had to wait to get to page 333 to find out that I'm slow as crap and I got bricks in my pants.
I love that.
So some people didn't actually read it and find their name until way later, but it was just fun to get the calls from people as they discovered their own name in the story.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I recognize a few names, and I thought that was actually marvelous. So, I use people's personalities and different quirks from folks to write character dialogue. I really pull from, friends and family. I don't use names necessarily, or if I do, I'll tweak a couple of letters to make it sound different. But I loved that you could use other people, people from your life in your story. And I thought it actually gave it great character. Honestly, I loved it. The dialogue was wonderful too.
You basically did the same thing. You were pulling from people that you just didn't use their actual names. But
exactly,
as a writer, it makes it easier for us because, like one of my characters in this story, who was, for anybody that's read the story that's on this call, the rammer, Tim Ramage, he was over at my house last night shooting pool with me. So, when you're writing a story and you just know what your buddy would say and react, it makes it easier to write the dialogue, actually.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes it easier when you see their name, because I know I have a couple characters I based off of family members who are more quick-witted. And so, I'll think about this character and go, what would they say if it was, my, whoever, and I start writing it, and it just flows so nice. And the dialogue hits real great. You kind of feel that connection with the characters. I'm really glad you did it that way. I really enjoyed it when I read it. I really enjoyed it. So along with the fun parts, what was the hardest part about writing your book?
The hardest part was making sure that there weren't inconsistencies. As we said, it was almost a 400-page book, 384 pages. So I found that after I'd done the rough draft, I went back and there were some things that maybe I said on page 57 that didn't jive with what I said on page 12.
Yep.
So I had a lot of inconsistencies. I had some good beta readers who pointed out a couple of them. That was difficult. And it was difficult in the story, I did some comparisons of baseball as it was in 1979 compared to baseball as it was in 2019. And the different changes. Like, for instance, in 1979, the strikeout rate with hitters was on average about 15, 16%. Now it's over 20%.
Wow.
A lot more strikeouts in the game. So comparing all those numbers and making sure that, the real baseball people reading the story would believe those numbers, and those were the true numbers.
That's cool. It definitely, did it take you a long time to get all your research done? Because it sounded like there was a lot of researching you did.
Yeah, it did take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I also did research on Nashville. As you know, the story was set partially in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been to Nashville. I've been to 48 states and 23 countries. I've been to Memphis, but I've never been to Nashville.
No way.
So I don't know what the layout of Nashville is. So I had to study the street maps, and, there was a celebration at a high school there, and that's the real high school. So I wanted it to be accurate.
Cool. Yeah.
Part of the story was set in College Park, Maryland, which is my hometown.
Okay.
So I have the locales there in my head, of course, but Nashville was new to me. So I had to do the research on Nashville and make sure I had the parade route, went down the proper streets and whatnot.
That's so cool. I love that. So through all this reading and taking 2 years to write it, I know at the very back of your book you had 9 virtues.
Right.
So I'm kind of coupling that with this other question. So what do you hope others will learn from your book? I mean, you kind of summarize it at the tail end, but what I want to hear it from you. What do you hope others will get from your book when they read it?
Wow, that's a great question, Ryan. I'm so glad you asked it too. Optimism is my first answer to that. I've always been an optimist from the time I was a little kid, and I was even a member of the Optimist Club when I lived in Washington, D.C. area. We used to raise money for youth, and we used to read the Optimist Creed. In fact, the Optimist Creed is sitting about 3 feet away from me here. So I've always promoted optimism and faith, and so I wanted people to come away from the story feeling encouraged, feeling like they could overcome challenges, because, as you know, there were challenges in the story that had to be overcome. Any good story has challenges to overcome. Things weren't easy for the characters in the book. So, I wanted people to come away with anything that life throws at them. If they have the right attitude, they can work through it, and it's going to be okay.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed how you ingratiated the optimism with dealing with just hard things that happen, just naturally hard, difficult things that happen with life. And the main character, the genius, I'm not going to go any further, just
Yeah.
his attitude. I loved his attitude. Just the positivity, like I told you, the energy when I was reading it was just I didn't want to put it down. It was just so great. And it was a happy book. I'm going to say it was a happy book. It was
Yeah.
full of nostalgia too. I'm not one who has I have a lot of baseball memories, going to, see the Mariners and everything when I was a kid. But playing, ball outside with friends and family, that was kind of what I took away from it, because there was a lot of that kind of conversation, give and take, coaching in the book, which I thought was just great as someone who's done a little bit, but not a whole lot. It was just, and hopefully I can take that same positivity and take it with for my kids as they grow up too, with
Yeah.
using baseball as the median.
Mhm.
So kind of an oddball one, but what's one of your interesting writing quirks? You got anything kind of weird or interesting that maybe you think that you've developed over the last couple of years of writing?
My writing quirks. I don't know. That's a bit of a stumper at the moment. My writing quirks. I don't know. I
Okay.
think I'm pretty quirky anyway, but I think most writers are quirky.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, actually, so you used puns quite a bit in your stories, which the dad jokes and the puns, I love those. Those
Oh,
make me giggle quite often. I had to read a couple of them out to my wife, and she just shook her head and she's like, "Why are these entertaining to you?" I said, "I don't know. They're
yeah.
just funny. They're just
Yeah.
funny, So I enjoy the puns quite a
Yeah.
bit.
It's a little bit cheesy. I
It
had a
is.
little bit
That's
of
okay.
cheese in there, a
Yeah.
little nostalgia, a little bit of cheesiness.
Yeah. Cheese is fine.
But yeah, you're
That's
right.
great.
Like the dad jokes, you kind of roll your eyes, but I think they're funny. But yeah,
I do too.
I did some research. I decided I wanted one of the characters there to be a punster. Just
Hmm.
thought it would make the character kind of interesting. So I didn't pull all those puns right directly out of my head. I pulled some of them out, but there's a lot online that you can find. So.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot. There's a lot out there. So, as a kiddo, did you want to be a MLB player?
Oh, big time.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
thought I was going to be, I thought I was pretty good. I peaked at about age 10, I think, but
Me too.
I was a good ball player in my little town, but every little town's got a good ball player, and get up to the next level and it's a whole nother story.
Hmm.
But my mother started me out when I was 3 years old. My dad was working a government job, and my mother was home taking care of us. And I remember I was about 3 years old, and she'd take me out in the backyard, and she'd just toss a little ball to me underhand. And she would, of course, see where I was swinging, and she'd put it right there. So she'd basically hit my bat, and I thought I was a slugger. And then I started playing some catch in the neighborhood with some neighbors, and the man down the street was coaching a little league team, so he invited me to be on his team, and the rest is sort of history. I just fell in love with the game, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to, round up my buddies in the neighborhood every day and let's go have a pickup game. And I read every book on baseball and the how-to books, how to throw a curveball, how to do this, how to do that. And if you'd asked me before I was about 16 years old, what do you want to do? I want to be a Major League Baseball player.
Awesome.
People want to be a fireman or policeman or a teacher. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, but I just wasn't good enough. So not many are.
No, it's very select, very select. What position did you end up playing most?
Oh, I was a pitcher and a shortstop.
Okay.
I liked pitching the most. I couldn't throw that hard. I relied on deception and good control and a pretty decent curveball.
Yeah. How
An
long did?
occasional knuckleball.
Oh, okay. Did it take you quite a while to learn how to do that?
Yeah. I started actually too early. I started throwing curveballs when I was 11 or 12 years old, and coaches today know better than that.
Oh, really?
And I developed some elbow problems, but yeah, it took a while, and I actually started throwing a knuckleball because there was a kid about 3 years older that used to throw knuckleballs, and he taught me how to throw one.
Oh, cool.
So anytime we'd go play catch, we'd just throw knuckleballs to each other.
I didn't know there was a kind of an age in which to to pitch certain types or pitch certain type of throws. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, when you haven't fully developed and the curveball puts a lot of torque on the elbow, when you snap your wrist so hard, and it really can do some damage to the tendons around the elbow.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I know this. You've got some authors who are friends. Has any of them helped you kind of become a better writer along the way?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been a lot of fun getting to know other authors. I've gotten into this whole author world in the last year or so, and it's just been amazing. I have a lot of new friends like you and others, and yeah, I pick up little tidbits from this person and that person. One of the more interesting ones was a real experienced author told me that I used too much tagging. I would tagging meaning identifying who the speaker was in the dialogue, because sometimes it's just assumed the reader will know who's saying what, but apparently and he made a good point. I have to be more aware of that in the future. There's sometimes you don't need to say said Ryan. It's obvious that Ryan said this.
Yes. So
I was tagging too much on the dialogue.
That was something I was doing a lot early on in my first revision of Soldiers of Fire. I did that quite a bit, and then I realized after I was reading several different books. I think it was one of the Bosch series of Michael Connelly. It's a LA detective, and I noticed that when it was just him and then like his partner, there was no he said, she said, he said, she said. It was just, you knew the tone and the pattern of the character. And so, well, if he talked first, obviously she's going to respond next. So you don't need to say he or she said. When I did that cut out so much tagging. But I don't know, but when you have any more than that, I think you have to, when you have 3 or more people, you have to tag some.
Yeah.
That's definitely good. It's a small skill that you wouldn't think you need until you start writing books.
It's just something to be mindful of, and I wasn't mindful of it before. So
no, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you co-authored 2 other books before you wrote Genius Who Saved Baseball. Do you market those books at all? Do you have any work with those books at all?
No, I don't really market those anymore. One of them was called Marketing by Delight. They're both business marketing books, and the other is Your Ultimate Sales Force. And frankly, a lot of the information is rather dated, because that was back in, say, like 2006, 2008.
Oh, okay.
So technology has changed so much with marketing that, I remember in my book, Marketing by Delight, I talked about Palm Pilots, if you remember Palm Pilots. So it's a little, you're like you said, a little dated. So yeah, you're definitely more focused on your current book, which I would be too. It's fabulous. But I really enjoy writing fiction. I'm sure I'll never write another nonfiction. Yeah. And I'll probably write more fiction. I just love writing fiction. I only wish I'd started when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I had my English teacher in high school told me that she noticed I had some writing skills, and she told me that I should be a poet. And I laughed. I'll never forget. She told me you should be a poet. I said, well, poets never make any money. I don't want to be a poet.
Yeah,
I wish I'd started earlier. I didn't start until after. I didn't write my genius book until after I retired. So
right, yeah, and with poetry too. Actually, I started my I would say writing journey with poetry too, and it wasn't anything I seeked out. It was a class assignment, and we started doing some of that, and then I got pulled aside and was, hey, this is really good. How did you do it? I'm like, I don't know, just the iambic pentameter and the rhythm and rhyme of it just was fun. It was just something fun to do. And then I found out later that actually helped a lot with developing my kind of rhythm for writing stories too. So poetry's got some good foundational skills to be taught at a young age to help you write stories. I found that to be true. I didn't realize it until later on. So it's pretty cool. Let's see. So as a writer, what's the best money you've ever spent?
That's a great question, and I can answer that quickly.
Okay.
The best money I ever spent was hiring my publishing coach.
I agree.
Patrick Snow. And any potential authors out there, man, I will never forget. He told me, he said, before I'd hired him, he said, Bob, he said, after you write your book, then you have 100 little decisions you have to make. And they're not actually little decisions, they're big decisions. What kind of font, what's the size, what kind of paper do you want? What's the cover going to be like? I mean, I'm only scratching the surface. I didn't know I thought I'd written a good book, but I didn't know anything about the publishing business, nothing. So I'd just be a babe in the woods. So that was the best decision I made, was to hire somebody that could actually hold my hand and walk me through it. And we talk every other week. We still do.
Oh, really?
And he's a tremendous help to me. He's the one who encouraged me about the film, that it could be an independent film. And just like anything else, you need coaches. If you're going to be good at anything, you need a coach.
I totally agree. And I mean, for also, I just after I finished your book, I kind of just took a step back and looked at your book as a whole. It is so well done. I mean, just the cover, everything, it just looks so professional, and it looks very good on my shelf, by the way. It looks very good on my shelf. It looks even better on my hands being read, but it is a beautiful cover. I really like it. Just feels good in your hands.
Yeah. I love that it's hardback too.
Oh yeah. Hardback is amazing. I love hardback.
Yeah. I was going to get a soft cover, and I went hardback because I wanted it to be a legacy. I wanted it to be on the shelf in 75 years when I'm long gone, for my great grandchildren, to maybe encourage them, that, because people are weird. People think these things like, well, maybe I can write something because my great grandpa wrote one. No, there's a book up on the shelf. So I like to encourage people, and then I can encourage somebody after I'm not here anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, I know my boys are still pretty young, but they know that dad writes books, and they don't really understand what that is until it shows up. And I, just had another one done. And so I'm looking through it, and they're like, is that one of your books? I was like, yeah. And so they're not totally into, their interests aren't necessarily reading and writing yet, but whenever they see that, they get excited about creating something and excited about the process. So it does definitely inspire people, especially younger generations.
That's so cool. And I love your book too.
Thank you very much.
You went through the similar process that I did, and you went hardcover also. And it makes all the difference in the world. Your book is beautifully done.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Patrick was a key element in me getting that done. It's a long story with that one, but it's so worth the time and money spent with him.
Yep.
So you were a marketing professional beforehand. I'm sure you still are, but I mean, what's the best way in your mind to market your book?
I think the best way to do it is to never give up, to market your book for life, as Patrick taught me. And of course, there's lots of podcasts, which we're doing now, lots of podcasts, lots of new ways to get out there. But still, I think you just need to just be out there and do as many book signings as you can, say yes to every opportunity to go speak someplace, and just be a marketing person. I feel like I remember back in school, when you're taking business courses, you study factories and they produce widgets. Do you remember that? In Business 101, factories produce widgets. I view my book as my widget. And if I can't market my book, shame on me.
I definitely need to take a point from your marketing abilities, because I need to start doing more of that. So we got a couple more questions here. In your book, what was the hardest scene that you had to write? I mean, it flowed so nice. I couldn't pick it out of the book. But when you were writing it, what was the hardest scene for you to write?
Wow. Well, that's going to be the first chapter. Yeah. The first chapter was the hardest to write. And I didn't do it right the first time. Thank God for a great editor.
I agree.
So what happened was I didn't get right into the story immediately. The first draft that I did, that I submitted to the editor, I took the first 5 or 6 pages to sort of set the scene. And when I set the scene, I have to tell you, it was really, looking back on it, it was really boring. My editor told me, I'm going to give you a direct quote from my editor.
Sure.
He said, Bob, you have 38 chapters in the book. Chapters 2 through 38 flow beautifully. They're smooth. There's no loss in interest. But he said, chapter 1 is kind of boring. And I said, ouch,
Yeah.
But you know what? I knew he was right.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that he said that. He said, you took 5 or 6 pages to set the scene. He said, you need to get right into the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So before when I set the scene, so to speak, I started out something along the lines of, it was a warm autumnal day as they strolled into the coffee shop. And it was just blah, blah, blah for the first 5 or 6 pages. He said, no, you get right into the dialogue. So instead of like that first 5 or 6 pages of blah, 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 if I can, I'll read the exact, he said, get right into dialogue. So here's the first sentence of the book now. It's official. Baseball's ruined forever, said Frank, walking into the cafe and throwing down his newspaper in disgust. What's wrong? Asked his best friend Dustin as their favorite barista Matty brought his coffee. All these stupid analytic freaks are messing with the game, said Frank. Now they want to put clocks in baseball to time the pitcher. What's next? 2-minute warnings and penalty boxes? Have I gone nutso? So, they're into the dialogue right away.
Yeah.
And
There's
so,
emotion to it.
I feel like if I write a great first chapter, then I want to write a great second chapter. That's kind of was the way I went about it,
I like it.
So anyway, yeah, that was, it was difficult to write the first chapter, at least to do it well.
I'm really glad you did, because it grabs you from the beginning and it just doesn't let you go until the very end, which is which is fantastic. So we got another question here was, did you actually have any secrets in your book? Only a few people will find some kind of just maybe something I wouldn't catch necessarily, but maybe like your wife or best friend or cousins or brothers or family would have noticed if they read it.
Oh yeah, I had a few family things there, and the way that what we would say to our pet, our dogs, things like that. I also had some very subtle things in that I knew most people wouldn't catch. Like, I'll run one by you. I'll bet you didn't catch this one. One of the pitchers that I had in the game, in one of the games, was a closer. Closer is a guy that comes in the ninth inning to finish the game, the closer.
Yeah.
So the closer's his first name was Justin, and his last name was Case.
Just in case. I did.
Just in case. Pitcher comes in just in case you need him. And only one person caught that.
Oh, really?
And said, hey, that was pretty nifty, that just in case, the closer.
Yeah.
So
I did catch that. I thought that was awesome.
You caught that too?
I did catch it. Yeah.
That's great. You're the second person to catch that. I love
Fantastic.
it. Yeah.
The only reason I caught it was because there was an emergency pack, a first aid called a just in case. And I've had that in the back of my car forever. So I saw that. I'm like, okay, that's brilliant.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm so happy you caught that.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of nuances and different things like I caught. I can't remember them all because it's 400 pages and I've already started reading some other stuff, but yeah, it's all there. Yeah. It's all great stuff. So we're kind of coming to the conclusion here. But the very last and most important, in my opinion, the last question would be, where can we get a copy of your book?
Well, I have a fulfillment center here in my home, which is one of our spare bedrooms. I call it the fulfillment center.
I like it.
So you can just go directly to my website, which is the name of the book.com, thegeniuswhosavedbaseball.com. And you can order one there, and I'd love to sign them, and I personalize them. If I get some good instructions, sometimes somebody will say, hey, can you send this to my friend? He's a real Detroit Tiger fan. So, cool. I can sign it to, to a loyal Tigers fan. Next year might be your year. Here's to having a special love for the game of baseball, awesome. Something like that.
Awesome. I love it so much. And then you're also at a restaurant in Gig Harbor sometimes.
Yeah, there's a restaurant in Gig Harbor that's very kind to local authors. They let us have a table there and sell books to people as they come in. So I'm there about every 8 weeks. That is Barbecue to You.
Okay.
In Gig Harbor. It's fantastic barbecue. The owner's from Texas, and he even brings the wood in from Texas that he cooks the barbecue with, because you can't duplicate the flavor with wood from the Northwest.
No
I mean, that's
way.
going to real extremes to make it perfect, but it's great barbecue to you. And Gig Harbor.
I will definitely add to that. Yes, it is. We had a meeting there a few months ago with some other author friends, and we had lunch there. It was delicious. It's BBQ2, the number 2, and then U, and it is very good. Smells amazing. It's a very nice place to go eat. Well, Bob, this has been fantastic. I'm so glad we could do this today. And thank you for coming on to the Mighty Books podcast.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. This is actually the first podcast I've been on.
Well, you know what? If in a year or so, if you and I want to do this again, I would love to have another chit chat with you. So that this is always here for us to kind of come around and just have good talks about being authors and our books and the messages we create when we're writing them.
We'll talk about the upcoming movie.
Now, I would definitely want to get on that. I definitely want to get on that. Updates on that. 100%.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it, Ryan.
My pleasure. All right, guys, take care and have a great day. Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.